Hi guys, this is Scribbly again with another pen review, and today we're going to have a look at a Graf von Faber-Castell fountain pen, and the model that we're going to have a look at today is called Tamitio. Thanks a lot to Appelboom Pennen in the Netherlands who has sent me this pen for review. Before we look at the pen, let's look at the packaging. It comes as most Graf von Faber-Castell pens in this white cardboard box, which is just a protective sleeve for the main box, so to speak, saying Graf von Faber-Castell. Looks very elegant, obviously. Graf von Faber-Castell. Faber-Castell's sort of like upmarket stationery brand. Opens up very, very beautifully. This is a sort of like a magnetic closure. Here you then get like a booklet saying Graf von Faber-Castell, handmade in Germany. As said, I have gotten that pen from Appelboom at appelboom.com right here for review. And then, you know, it's a small booklet showing different products, stationery writing instruments, different writing modes such as ballpoint and pencil and fountain pen and so on. You then get the pen that comes in this beautiful little leather cloth bag, of course, also saying Graf von Faber-Castell. Nice structure right here on that material. Yeah, well, and then the pen does rest in here. That's that. Let's put that aside and look at the Graf von Faber-Castell Tamitio. This is a steel-nibbed fountain pen, and yes, if you're a little bit familiar with the Graf von Faber-Castell fountain pen line, you will figure out, this pen looks a little bit like a couple of other pens. It does look a little bit like the Graf von Faber-Castell Intuition. I do not have one here right now, unfortunately. And it also looks, and that I have here, a little bit like a Graf von Faber-Castell Classic. I will be doing a comparative review in between those two at some point, but I just wanted to show you real quick that there is quite some resemblance right here. The Classic, of course, a way more expensive pen with a gold nib. This one here not being particularly inexpensive, by the way, and I'll talk about price at the end of the review, but that's that, so you have seen that. The Graf von Faber-Castell Intuition is a cylindric pen that we are now going to cover from top to bottom. The cap does sort of like flare out, does become wider as we go up, almost like a crown or like a hat, a cylinder, like probably a crown is, as we talk about Graf von Faber-Castell, is the better image. It has like sort of like an indentation right here. It's, by the way, very great to play with this. You have the same indentation on the opposite side here. It's sort of a little bit like of a, let me call it a fidget toy when you sit in a meeting or you're lost in your thoughts, trying to crack a nut, thinking about a problem. It's very nice to just like, you know, feel those indentions here with your hand. It's just a, you know, a nice feeling. Anyway, it does say Graf von Faber-Castell right around the edges right here. In the middle, you do have the Graf von Faber-Castell logo right here. That's what that looks like. I'm not sure if this is metal or plastic. It's very hard for me to say. It's probably plastic. You then have like a, in relation to the overall pen, rather short cap that has a spring-loaded clip. Very characteristic Faber-Castell clip, right? I mean, like you also find that on the Classic. You also find it on the Perfect pencil, same clip design. Very, very utilitarian, because very useful. You can just sort of like clip that into a shirt pocket or pen pouch with one hand because of the way how it flares out right here. I find it's a very beautiful clip design. Then there's no center band or something like that. It does say handmade in Germany here though. You then have like the fluted barrel. This is a metal barrel which is covered in a lacquer, in a matte lacquer that does have some kind of a structure, a very gentle structure, as you can see right here. And then you have like a small silver end knob thingy here with that same indentation. You uncap the pen. This goes fairly easy, by the way. In the beginning, I was worried that like, oh, that goes very, very easy. I do hope that that pen won't uncap in a pen pouch, or even worse, in a shirt pocket. I have carried the pen in a shirt pocket a couple of times and it has never come loose. So seems to be pretty safe. Obviously it's neat because it makes it for a very quick note taker if it does uncap that easily. So that's great. You then do have like a inner cap right here that prevents the nib from drying out. Does an excellent job in doing so. The design here is very nice because like I'm not even sure this is a section. Probably it is not, because like it's way too short to hold it right here, and I'll get back to that in a second. But you do see the design resemblance in between those two parts right here, which is obviously a very, very nice design feature. You could then post the pen and it does click in place. I'm not sure if you can even hear that. As said, it does click in place. Well, balance. When I hold the pen in hand like this, I'd say it works, actually. This is a fairly heavy cap. But since the weight rests right around here in the web of my hand, I wouldn't say that this is off balance. It is a tad top heavy, I will say that. But yeah, it works. Slightly top heavy, by no means unwieldy, but slightly top heavy. Anyway, I would prefer to write the pen unposted. I think it is plenty long enough to be written unposted, and I do find it very comfortable like that. Let's look at the nib. Graf von Faber Castell logo right here. Interesting nib design, EF for extra fine. It is a Faber Castell steel nib, I would say. It's the same nib. Let me get a Faber Castell pen right here for you. Just give me a second. This is the Ondoro in Smoke Oak. We'll review that at some point. Just to show you, the nib is the exact same. Just that, and the feed is the exact same, right? Just that this Faber Castell nib with that dimple design right here gets a slightly different design, a Graf von Faber Castell design. But I mean, as you see, it's the same housing and so on. So I mean, like, it's the same nib and feed construction that you then also find on any other Faber Castell pen, right? So this is the same nib than the one that you find on the Faber Castell Loom, or, you know, any other Faber Castell pen for that matter. But I do like the nib design. I do think it looks great. It's a fantastic nib, I can say that. In my humble opinion, the Graf von Faber Castell nibs are some of the best steel nibs out there. These Faber Castell nibs, they are just absolutely fantastic, smooth with a tad of feedback. They are perfect. They are a joy to use. As said, this little silver thing right here in front, I don't think it's a section, you know. It's impossible to hold the pen right here. I mean, you just can't, except you have miniature hands. So, you know, you'll find your grip wherever you are comfortable. And I do find this pen very, very comfortable to hold. This metal material here that is lacquered is not slippery at all, very comfortable to hold. The tricky bit is opening the pen, because actually you have to hold onto this small little bit right here, which is metal, gets very slippery, so it's very hard to actually get a grip on here while trying to also not touch, and I have done that right now, onto the nib, because then you get inky fingers. So as you see, I'm pretty much cramping onto this thing right here. In order to get that out, the pen does then come with a converter. I have filled it with J. Herbin Eclat de Saphir, one of my favorite blue inks right here. But of course, it does also take sort of like standard international cartridges. As said, this is it's a bit, I don't know, it's not very useful to have it like that, but it's what it is. Let's do a writing sample with this beautiful nib here. Hasn't even dried up. By the way, I just inserted this converter from another pen. And you see this is not J. Herbin Eclat de Saphir, because this is now some kind of a blue-black forming up here. This is probably, I've not cleaned that pen out properly. Of course, before I review pens, I always try them with different inks and so on. So I had like a black or dark gray ink in between, and apparently I've not cleaned the nib and feed out properly. Now I've inserted a Eclat de Saphir just for the purpose of this review right here now. And then you see sort of like the ink doing all kinds of weird and wonderful things right here. We are writing here with the Graf von Faber Castell Tamitio with a extra fine nib, which is tuned to absolute perfection. This thing is just wonderful. Even gives you a little bit of line variation, not that much. This is a pretty stiff nail-ish steer nib. It's a pretty true to the size extra fine. I would say it is not a fine, this is a extra fine. Very nice, so precise, so smooth, so perfect. This is a absolute wonderful nib, an absolute joy to write with, and I think a very well made and beautifully designed pen. Apart from, you know, I personally do find, as said, this is now not a comparative review, but just quickly, I personally care more for the classic design where the cap is a little bit longer. I just think that the proportions work better. I do find that the cap of that pen looks a tad short, but that's just me. And then sort of like this, you know, having to open the pen like this and not really any surface to grab onto, I think, I mean, it's of course by no means a deal breaker, but it's, you know, it's not most useful. Last but not least, price. Guys, the pen costs 200 euro, I think 195 euro at Appelboom Pennen, which I, to be honest, find too expensive. This is a steel nibbed pen. Yes, it's a Graf von Faber Castell. Yes, it is their top class line, but that's the branding, right? It's a Graf von Faber Castell, but it's a steel nib. It's the same steel nib as you find on a Graf von Faber Castell loom, and it's a converter pen. A Ondoro or so costs a little bit above 100 euro. It's also converter filled, also has that steel nib, and I think sort of like 100 euro, maybe 120 euro. That's as far as you can stretch it, sort of, with a converter filled pen with a steel nib, even if you then have it being a Graf von Faber Castell. And even if it's a wonderful design, I really, really like it. And I really like the pen, lays well in hand, writes very well. It's a very, very, very nice pen, to be honest. I like it a lot, but I personally find that 195 euro for a pen with a steel nib and a piston converter is stretching it a bit far, to be honest. If you like the design and you don't mind dropping that money on it, then by all means go for it. It is not a bad pen at all. The opposite is true. I'll just say it once more. It is a fantastic writing instrument with a beautiful clip, very functionally, very quick note taker. You can get it in all kinds of colors. You get it in orange and blue, and not only in that black. It's available in India red, and it's available in many colors. It's beautiful, minimalist, sleek, works very well in business or university settings and so on. So if the price tag doesn't disturb you, by all means go for it. That is my own personal opinion, not associated to anyone else's opinion. Guys, that was that with the review of the Graf von Faber Castell Tamitio. I hope it was helpful to you. Thanks once more to my friends over there at Appelboom Pennen in the Netherlands for shipping this beauty for review. I hope it was helpful to you out there, and I'll see you at the next review. Ciao, ciao.